Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to another Geek News Roundtable, the first of 2022. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having an awesome day that you're listening to this. For me, like, the cabin fever might officially be ending, and I have a light at the end of the tunnel, and I can actually go back to work. So I'm happy about that, but people might be a little interested into why I have titled this the way that I have, because I am being joined by somebody on the other side of me. Either you're seeing this visually or you're seeing this, or you're listening to this. I'm being joined by somebody who hasn't been here since May of 2020. Actually, no, earlier than that, since January of 2020. And I'm here to do what a lot of people thought was going to be the unthinkable. And that is welcome back, as a special guest, Brinton Valli. Brinton, how have you been these past few years?
That is a loaded question.
aside from growing a lumberjack beard, which, by the way, kudos.
Oh, this is not lumber. Well, I just hit my microphone. This is not lumberjack status, but I appreciate you saying that.
Hey,
I take pride in what I grew.
Dude, at this point, like, if you and me and a couple of my radio SLCC buddies were here, this would be the beard war, and I'd probably have to grow out my beard again, and my wife would hate me. Because I did that for like 2 months. She hated it. She's like, I hate that thing, and it's winter, and fuck it.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a while, and people might be wondering why the heck things have changed to be able to bring you back. Because, well, for those who are brand spanking new to this, this isn't going to affect you that much, but to longtime listeners, Brinton actually was he was kind of the unofficial fourth man of the podcast whenever we could actually get him on. And in a lot of those cases, it was basically to do that intro to the year kind of podcast. But then Brinton and I had a bit of a falling out in May of 2020. And ironically, this was when COVID was running wild. COVID mania was running wild, and then I want to say a week or two before that, we had the George Floyd incident happen, which then just sparked everybody into an uproar. And that's kind of why we're here, is because, unfortunately, one of the casualties that did occur during that, not necessarily because of those events, but because of stuff stirred up around it. You and I got into a bit of a fight on Twitter, and then abruptly separated. And we did all the usual, like, separation and everything like that. And I went off to go do my thing, and you went off to go do yours. And we'll get into the majority of this, but ultimately, this has now ended in you and me reconnecting in December of 2021. And aptly enough, like a week or two before that, Romney unfortunately had to step out of the podcast, and so we you are not the replacement, might I say, but somebody has to fill the seat, my friend. And I have made the decision that should be you. Now you are no longer the official fourth man; you are the official third man. You are Hulk Hogan in the NWO. How do you feel about that?
Oh my gosh. For now, we're comparing me to lumberjack, Hulk Hogan. I do not remotely in any sense of the word.
Dude, it is January. I have been confined. And so I've been watching nothing but wrestling commentary videos, not necessarily for anything new that's going on. Everything that, like, for past legendary angles. So,
no, the reference makes complete and total sense. You're fine.
So let's do this. And I promise this is not a heel turn for the podcast, but so in May of 2020, we got into a bit of a scuffle on Twitter. Specifically, I actually tried to dig this old Facebook post up, and it has since been buried. And that is actually really sad, because I wanted to bring it up and actually kind of go through it and go into a little bit more of an explanation of where I was with it. But Suffice to say, this was a Facebook post from some random guy that was making the comparison that if you liked Iron Man, means you're a fan of Stan Lee. If you're a fan of Stan Lee politically has leaned liberal most of his life. And that's not untrue. He has. He was a New York Democrat. Rest in peace. And so that's not necessarily true. But what they were basically trying to paint with that is if you liked this comic book, therefore you don't get a choice in the matter. You have to agree with his politics. And if you don't, you deny yourself. You deny who you are. You deny who your geek standing. You don't deserve any of that. And this thing flew around for quite a while. I actually saw a lot of content creators on the right and on the left take it apart. And you had reposted it because at the time you agreed to it. And then we had a little bit of a tussle about that, but I'll let you kind of take over there. Like where were you at with it?
Yeah, so for all intents and purposes, it's almost been 2 years since that has happened.
Yeah.
So I don't fully recall all of the details. All I can really recall is ultimately the disagreement that we had concerning the root of the reason why that comparison was made, and it was our disagreements and how we viewed Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Uh, Due to how I'm going to put it, and obviously you may think differently, which is beautiful. And there are people who are listening who will probably think differently than me, which is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the murder of George Floyd. And so um, I
And for
now
the
get
record,
to
we're
be.
both calling it a murder. Like
Oh, okay.
we don't
Well,
have a
still,
problem
like,
saying that. My only issue and I brought this up with you beforehand was
mhm.
um I don't just rush to judgment. I wanted more information, and I got lambasted for a couple of days on that because I was just like, wait, we're gonna find out more information on it, and lo and behold, we did find out more information. Did it exonerate Derek Chauvin? No, not really. Did it make as did it make George Floyd as sympathetic a figure as he was? Not really. It basically grayed up the whole situation. And that's why I got lambasted for it, and even you and me had disagreements with that. I even remember having a little bit of a disagreement with your husband at the time on that. Um
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because I feel it segue into the fact that he is no longer my spouse.
yes. Now, this is not solely the reason that we this is not the reason that we've gotten back together, and now everybody's fanfic has come true and you are
Sick,
finally going to be the
sick
homewrecker.
fantasies.
No, no,
You know what? I completely forgot that there were certain individuals who were for some reason hoping that I was coming in to break up your marriage, and I was like, "Why?"
I think it was a joke, honestly. Like I've
I
brought it up with them. It's just like, yeah, no, it was just totally a joke. It's just like you guys got along so well, it was kind of creepy. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
whatever.
what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Like, a straight and a gay man can't just flirt
Well,
with each other online?
look, this is modern day Twitter and Facebook. Nope. I mean, everybody has sexual meaning towards anything they do. Like, there's no such thing as a casual relationship, Brinton. Get over it.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
exactly. So yeah, that was a big thing that kind of changed out of it. In fact, one of the things that made me giggle out of it personally, because I think you knew this at that point, is that I had like one of his one of the premises that he got mad at me about is that I always tend to bring up unpopular opinions, especially at that time on social media. I want to make sure every voice was heard. And the argument that him and me in particular had was because I had put up a podcast of Dave Rubin interviewing Larry Elder. And Larry Elder is as anti Black Lives Matter as you possibly can get. And I just am a stern believer of hearing from all sides on the matter, and I do think he brings up some legitimate points. To which I then got hammered about how much I don't know about what black people have to deal with, and I guess he never knew that I had a black brother. So, yeah, it's not like I hadn't done my homework on that.
Right. And so ultimately, for all those who are currently listening in, this is where I get to explain myself a little
Yes.
bit. This is where I get to explain the abrupt departure from the show, and ultimately what has brought me back.
Mhm.
Um, Me being at the final stages as of this particular show, or this particular episode. Um, I am at the tail end of the divorce. However, I get to go back in time a little bit. Um, and for all those who have watched the show for a long time, you're obviously going to know whom I'm talking about. I will not mention his name for his own privacy. And
No,
so,
there's a divorce in the process, which means there's court, which means there's lawyers, which means
mhm,
there's no way.
exactly. So, new viewers, like, sorry, not sorry, even after everything's said and done and the courts aren't involved anymore, like, there's no reason for me to bring up his name.
I'm sure we'll
So,
come
I'm
up
just
with a
not
name
going
for
to.
him eventually. We'll come up with something, and at that point, he won't be able to complain about anything because I can then just bounce back. Well, nobody knows when I'm talking about this person now, do they?
Exactly. Essentially, and I am going to preface this by saying it's going to sound like I'm not taking a lot of responsibility for my behavior and choices. And I promise you, just hear me out. And it's not really going to sound like that in the end.
Yep.
Um, my ex husband did not like Adam at all because Adam and I started to build I guess you could call a business relationship that then turned into a really strong friendship way
Hmm.
before I even met my ex husband. And Adam bringing me into his show, bringing me into his Drak and Shadow, and really promoting the YouTube content that I was creating really brought me into a community that I needed at that time of life. Um, Having my ex husband be a part of it only amplified and continued to make it better, or so I thought.
Yeah, we all thought that.
And behind the scenes, it wasn't so much the case. My ex husband would openly criticize to me numerous occasions that Adam was a freeloader, that he was trying to um, just live off of the hard work that his wife does, just so that he could try to make a internet show that was going to go nowhere, and
Hmm.
literally thought that he was just failing his family. And and I stood up for Adam. I supported him because I knew that this show was important to him. And it was important to me for that very same reason. And Adam's my friend. The miscommunication and just re-feeling the feelings and re-talking about what happened 2 years ago is really making me fully understand that one, even I didn't have all of the information that I needed to engage in the conversations I did with Adam. However, my ex-husband is a classic narcissist, manipulator, just someone who wants to be in control.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, even somebody with a degree in psychology, a degree in behavior, fell into that trap and fell into years of psychological abuse. And this was an opportunity in which my ex-husband gained the momentum needed to manipulate me into abruptly ending a friendship with Adam, somebody who I do care about deeply, simply because at the time, not all of us had all the information we needed. And with my ex leaning so far liberally, he just wanted nothing more to do with him,
Is
therefore
it safe?
manipulated
Is it
me
safe to say
to no longer do
he's
anything with him.
like when I use the term leftist? Is it safe to say like because what you've told me, it sounds like he's leftist. He's not necessarily even liberal anymore. He's abandoned that and he's gone like complete leftist.
Oh, I have no idea. I haven't really engaged in a political conversation with this man since like March 2021.
Sure.
So,
No, you're good.
um, so on that note, I left my ex-husband in March of 2021. There was a significant amount of red flags that started to form throughout the course of 2020. I fell into a bit of um, like anxiety, depression that really opened up my eyes to the man that I had married. And it all just slowly led to leaving him, which
Yeah.
came with its own form of trauma that I still am working through. Uh, piece by piece, even almost a year later. Um, and so my 2021 was just as difficult as anybody else 2020. I'm not going to say mine was more difficult than others. I would say it was pretty on par. We all had challenges. We all suffered. We all had a difficult 2021.
Yep.
For me, it was overcoming the it was overcoming the fact that I had married someone who had lied, manipulated, and used me for over 5 years. And again, I took that really hard because I do have a college education in behavior science, and I should have noticed the signs. And throughout my emotional and mental journey of 2021, I can proudly say that it was okay for me not to know or not see the signs because I was blinded by love, which happened, which
Yeah.
completely happened.
No, no, no. Like I mean, everybody knows that episode of Cops where like eventually they have to go and get the dude in the wife beater, and he's drunk and he's abusive and he's beating the crap out of his girlfriend, and they're hauling him away, but then you have the girlfriend kind of slowly coming in tow, going, "Don't take him away. I love him." Um and just because you've got a degree in how that works doesn't necessarily mean that uh, this is probably not the right word for it, but mortality sets in, and we want to because this is one of the things about marriage. You want to think the best of your significant other. You don't want to think that they're doing the wrong things right off the bat, but in some cases, that's how we can actually kind of blind ourselves to what's actually in front of our faces. And it's hard to see that we do that, but it happens all the like my wife has friends that don't like me. And that's totally fine. And like we cordially get along, like civilly get along. But I know for a fact that they've said nasty shit about me to her and said, "Well, you really ought to just dump him. Like he's not even worth it to you." I know that that's happened and I know tons of other relationships with other friends that have had like their significant other's family get involved and try to I'm not going to say whom, but a family member of mine, his in-laws were constantly trying to convince that his or that their significant other was cheating on them. And so at that point, like having to go through that kaleidoscope of going through every aspect of your life, this shit happens. It doesn't even matter if it's happening to a therapist or if it's happening to Joe Schmo. Like we don't want to think the worst about who we share a bed with.
Exactly. Ultimately, in the end, as I had made this really phenomenal journey throughout 2021, where I was able to begin learning how to be resilient to my shame and learning to love myself again and truly love myself, which single handedly was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life, even more difficult than serving a mission for the Mormon church, even more difficult than the night that I left my ex-husband was turning around and going back to the inner child that I threw out to rot on the side of the road and ask for forgiveness.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how happy that I did that for myself. And because of that, I was able to forgive myself for a lot of the things that I had done. Like I said, Nathan, or the person that I married, was a manipulator. He kept me away from a lot of people. I was able to reconnect with a lot of my family members. I was able to reconnect with a lot of my friends. And ultimately, throughout the duration of 2021, one of the people I wanted to reach back out to the most was Adam. And I was just not ready to do it until December 2021. Um, and so this is the part where, again, I know it sounds like, oh, you're just blaming your ex for the way that you acted. You're not taking responsibility. I do take responsibility for the way that I behave,
Well,
even though
and here's
because
here's the other thing that has to be considered in that. We are talking about this in a podcast format that allows for only so much time, and I can already tell you that the conversation that was had was far longer than anything that any kind of term of a podcast I could give. And frankly, a lot of that doesn't necessarily need to go on the air. There are parts of our lives that, like, don't get me wrong, my friends, I love all of you, but you don't need to know when I go take a poop in the morning. Okay? There are just some things in my emotional health that I don't need to bring here. And frankly, they don't belong here, especially with what we're talking about. But I can already tell people if we get a comment in there from somewhere saying like, "Oh, you're totally not taking any responsibility." He did. I can vouch for it. He did, because I'm not the easiest person to pass the accountability test with, and trust me, whether he knows it or not, I put him through the ringer on it. I did, and he passed. So yes, he has shown accountability, but there's no podcast in the world that is less than 8 hours where you'd be able to show that. So that being said,
I and so with that being said, um, I told Adam that I missed being on the podcast. One of the biggest things that I hated about going through 2020, at least, was the fact that I lost a huge creative component out of my life.
yep,
And so does that mean that I'm coming back to be doing YouTube content? Honestly, not really. Um, Even when I was doing the gamers with my old friend Will, it just became a chore to play video games. And video games has always been an outlet for me to like enjoy. Um, so to come back to do BTV gaming, even though the P no longer belongs in my name anymore, and like like continue my Final Fantasy 14 Let's Play and go back to doing Triad Let's Plays. It's just not really something that's going to
yep,
happen. So what does that mean in terms of, oh, well, what does this all mean in the end? Well, it simply means this. I am becoming an affiliate of Geek News Reviews and Opinions.
yep,
My creative contributions and everything that I want to do creatively is going to go into this show
yep.
and to be supporting Adam.
Yeah, and frankly, like I think you and I even had this conversation. Like, let's just say for the sake of argument, you try to bring Triad Let's Plays back. The algorithm is so far beyond you at this point. I don't even know if YouTube would be the place to do that. I almost would tell you like go full Twitch at that point and just do it that way. But even then,
Hmm.
you'd be subject to whatever meta Twitch has at that given moment. So it wasn't probably the best idea to do that. But here's the fun thing: a podcast isn't as much of a chore as, say, this is why I like podcasting and why I've stuck with it. And I know a lot of people on YouTube get pissed at me for saying that, but this is ultimately what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a radio kind of show that I was begging for as a teenager in the 80s and 90s, well, in the 90s, and it was never happening. because gaming and it being interested in Star Trek and Star Wars of all things was still very taboo, very very not cool. Um, and so at that point, like this is what it is, and I'm sure a lot of people will bounce back. Well, but you're doing all this game review stuff. Why isn't that a chore for you? Because I've literally taken all of that shit out of it. I'm not playing the YouTube numbers game anymore, and I'm so happy I'm not doing it. That's a weight lifted off my shoulders. I swear to God. So at that point, but I am going to bounce this back because I'm not making like a lot of people might be taking this as, oh, I'm just making him go and grovel to all of the GNRO fans and earn his place back. That's not what this podcast is intended to do. What this podcast is intended to do is through our situation, one thing was seriously learned is that politics is weaponizing fandom. And it's disgusting in so many levels because here's the thing, okay? We can all be fans of Stan Lee and have disagreements on what we believe. There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, Stan Lee would endorse all of us in doing that kind of thing. Um, that was the thing that I found so funny that everybody was bringing up on that one Facebook post that happened, and ultimately the post just disappeared. It went away and nobody could find it anymore. Almost as if the argument was won, kind of thing. And then we would have another one. I mean, the perfect example that I can give to you guys is look at G4 right now. G4 Tech TV, the thing that people loved from the early 2000s and wanted to see return has become nothing more than a political soapbox. And people are sick of it. On the right, on the left, in the center, everywhere. They're sick of it. They want to just be able to celebrate being a gamer, being a fan of movies. And they're sick of people preaching to them. And that's what I'm bringing here right now is that this was one of those unfortunate casualties that unfortunately we weren't the only ones that dealt with it. Okay, there were other divisive things that went out about various other fandoms, and it's disgusting that people are trying to take what we hold dear, what we take or what we go home to at the end of the day, because we have to deal with politics like in the 9 to 5. Like, you're a manager in a business, so you have to deal with what the tax system throws at you, kind of thing. And for me, it's no different. Like, we have to deal with this stuff, but the purpose here of fandom and escapism is to take, like, when we get home at 5 o'clock and we unwind and we can go into this and we don't have to deal with what bullshit Joe Biden is saying on CNN. Or let's throw it around to everybody else. Like Donald Trump or hate him, you don't have to deal with him in that amount of time. So like from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, when you got to go to bed, you don't have to deal with him. And that has been taken. And in some cases by force. People are not allowed to be able to be fans of Star Trek unless they like what's happening on Discovery. But what if I don't like Discovery? Well, then you're an evil bigot. No, I'm not. And that's basically what's happening here. And unfortunately that our friendship kind of ended because of that. Because one of the things that I even tried to point out before we had our deal, because I was actually getting into fights with quite a few people in that, and I actually brought up, like, let's just say for the sake of argument, this guy's right, and if you buy into, like, if you like the X-Men and therefore you're leftist and everything like that, okay, let's follow that line of thought. Well, for every hero, Brinton, there has to be a villain created, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stan Lee created, and I actually went out to go count to them. And the ones that I can guarantee this, he created 3 bona fide Hitlers in his career at Marvel, one of which succeeded and created like his utopian society. So what you're basically saying is, I like the X-Men, therefore I'm left wing, but the creator of the X-Men also created people who wanted other people to die in gas chambers. Really? Like that's not how that works. Like, as a writer, we have to create heroes, we have to create villains, and we have to create everybody in between. So, like, for every Cyclops and Wolverine and Professor X, there has to be a Magneto. There has to be an Apocalypse. And so at that point, and I was bouncing this to a lot of people. Like, okay, so what you're basically saying is that you also support the eradication and genocide of people simply based on the fact that they are not as superior as you. What do you mean? Well, Stan Lee created Apocalypse. I believe so. I believe he created Apocalypse. So at that point, and Apocalypse's literal belief is survival of the fittest. If you are not the fittest, you do not deserve to survive. And at that point, silence from these people. So it's like, I'm not trying to one up and say I was right or whatever, but that's the problem. That argument was so easy to take apart, and it destroyed people. Like, that's ridiculous. This thing was so easy to take apart, and everybody bought into it. And that's what I'm trying to avoid here. Is that, like you and I, who were mainly friends based on video games. Like, we talked about movies and we talked about comics and things like that, but we were based in video games a lot of the time. And then because if it hadn't have been that, it probably would have been like The Last of Us 2, because you were a fan of that game coming out. And after I saw the leaks, I was immediately going, oh, okay, well, this is Druckmann doing exactly what he did post Amy Hennig in Last of Us 1. And so it could have happened then, and Druckmann was more than happy to weaponize his fan base to be able to go and rip into those who didn't like the game. And that's wrong too, because not everybody is going to 100% agree that The Legend of Zelda is the greatest franchise ever. There are going to be people that hate it, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And we could still, and here's the thing, we don't have to go all into our little tribes and just be in those tribes. We can come together and say, you know what? That's cool too. And that's what's being lost so much. That's why in a lot of cases, I have drastically in the last 2 years changed my viewpoint on social media, as well as changed my whole viewpoint on how I deal with social media. I just laugh at it now because it's gotten so stupid. Like, this is the best way to describe it, and I think Brinton would agree with me on this. I actually saw an article at the beginning of 2022 that I threw up my hands in joy, as it said that Twitter is no longer being taken as seriously as it was back in 2020 or 2019, where major corporations were going to it to decide whether or not they should take this initiative. And one of the biggest examples that was being done was Disney in its approach to Star Wars, in its approach to Marvel, and all of that. Because we're starting to see changes that are happening with those, and they're no longer going to what a lot of us would call the vocal minority on Twitter to see whether or not they're doing the right thing, kind of thing. So I threw up my hands in joy. Yay, social media is no longer being taken seriously. It is the Florida Man article that you see in every newspaper. And that's, I mean, am I wrong? Is that how social media should be at this point?
You're completely right. Another thing that I wanted to add on to that is, don't take it so seriously like we are discussing right now. But also, one thing that I've learned a lot about social media, as I'm not taking it so seriously, I'm also approaching and consuming content that's only going to really help enrich me and bring joy into my life. But also at the same time, I frequent and I consume media that may not always be directly in agreement with some of my own core beliefs.
Yep.
And this is something that a lot of people, who have worked in social media businesses encourage and implore you to do. If you I know that like I know the examples I'm about to give are very black and white because I'm just going to say conservative and liberal, and I know there's so much more in between
Yeah.
that. But for the sake of this conversation, I'm wanting to get to the point. If you think more conservatively, it's not going to kill you to look at more liberal views, and vice versa.
Mhm.
It's only like it's actually healthy for you, and there's research and science and peer-reviewed articles that's only going to support what I'm saying. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. Like, I don't want everybody to agree with what I'm saying right now because that gets really boring really quick, and then I feel like I haven't made an impact in someone's life. And if
But
you
on
do
top
agree
of
with me,
that,
great.
it's essential to have the conversation. There's nothing wrong with having the conversation, even if that means that you butt heads at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Like I still remember on January 6th, that day that everybody apparently is just afraid of now. When me and Romney had like our first political knockdown drag out over it, and he's fairly left. And him and me have found ways to be able to agree. And we had knockdown dragouts on January 6th because this is one of the things that a lot of people got mad at me for is January 6th was going to happen regardless of whatever, because politicians had done enough to be able to say F you to the common citizenry that something like that was going to happen eventually. The powder keg was going to blow. And so I got like him and me had a knockdown drag out about it, and everybody ignored the concept that we were having the conversation that not even Congress wants to have, that not even the Senate wants to have. Getting a Republican and a Democrat to sit in a chamber and actually come to conclusions that might not necessarily 100% benefit them, like a true compromise, that doesn't happen anymore. And so that's the difference here, is that the conversation can be had, and whether it's just butting heads or not, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get something out of it. You could get something very minor out of it, Brinton, and that's still going to be something that you take from it.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And that is just, and if I, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, that's just kind of the focus of where the show is going to be taken. We don't really want to completely shy away from those difficult conversations anymore
yep,
because we want to
we're
we
definitely
want
going
to
to take a different
encourage.
approach to them. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not like we're gonna go both feet into the water and like political talk. That's not what we're saying here.
I'm going to be the next
But
Rush Limbaugh, and you're going to be the next Sturdley, and we're going to make this. I don't even know if I'm doing a Rush Limbaugh impression, but okay.
I don't even remember how it
I've
sounds.
listened to Rush
Ultimately,
once in my entire life, and most of that is because he's just not here. Like, he's never been broadcast here on any stations that we have. So if that's a Rush Limbaugh impression, then somebody's gonna have to tell me. Like, I think actually no, never mind, because Rush Limbaugh did The Simpsons. I forgot about that. He
oh
did The
yeah.
Simpsons. So okay,
I
that'd be
guess you're
two.
just gonna. Okay, I guess you're just gonna have to look
Yeah.
up on that. But ultimately, my friends, what we're trying to say here is that you can like what you like,
Yep.
and somebody can disagree with you, and you can still like what you like,
Hmm.
and they can still disagree with you, and you both are okay.
Yep.
You both are right, you both are wrong, you both can go to bed at night and sleep well.
And at the bottom line, if I want to make anybody question anything from this, is does this really help you? Does this divisiveness and tribalism that has been quoted by so many, does it really help you to be able to move forward? Like, okay, I'm a fan of Star Trek, not necessarily a fan of Gene Roddenberry's politics on it. But one of the things I've always loved that you can take out of it is one of the concepts from the next generation is that humanity just looks to better itself. Can you can you better yourself if you don't have those aggressive thoughts, if you don't question those big topics? it's very difficult to be able to do that when you're within your own echo chamber. And so at that point, that's something that I want people to take away from it, is that, yeah, this happened to us, and I don't let it happen to you, bottom line. But overall, can we stop doing the whole this side, my side, whatever, and actually like eventually say, okay, we all can be X-Men fans, and you can be the most leftist of Democrat, and I can be the most rightist of a Republican. Although I'd argue Republicans don't even exist anymore. Um, it's funny that I brought up the cops mentality, because that's how I feel like U.S. politics are now. Is that the Democrats are the drunk guy that's being arrested, and the Republicans are is the angry girlfriend going, "I love him," because they just continue to enable all this bullcrap.
Hmm.
So at that point, can you really call them Republicans? No, not really. But the bottom line of it is, we need to get this out of the fandoms, because that's not what it's meant to be. Fandoms can be political, but they're political within their own context. Um, one of my favorite shows, Babylon 5, did an amazing telling about times like this, but they kept it within their context. And so at that point, I've always wanted to bring that into like the Twitter conversation, but you can't really, because then at that point, if I mention something like the Night's Watch, everybody's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Well, because not a whole lot of people are watching Babylon 5. But that's the deal for it. Like, we can learn from that and we can grow. And even better, if we have a fellow fan who's a fan of the X-Men and maybe saw something we didn't see in the X-Men, they can then bring it up and we can go, "Oh, huh, that happened within the X-Men. Maybe I ought to rethink my viewpoint on this particular political issue." I literally know people who have changed their viewpoints on the most hot button issue, abortion, by reading X-Men. And they are the most pro-life people I've ever met. And they got it from the X-Men. So at that point, that's what I find absolutely wonderful out of fandom, is that you can shape yourself however you want to, and you don't necessarily need to have real life do it. So that's what I would take out of this. Please get all of that crap out of there. And on top of that, like, we will have those hard conversations. We'll have them in our own way. Like, I'm not necessarily going to say, "Oh, well, I'm going to go Rush Limbaugh and gank up on everybody because that's what I want to do." That's not what I want to do. But I am going to ask the honest questions, like I did with a lot of people actually got mad at me for doing this, but when we talked about the Dave Chappelle situation, I asked the honest question of Romney and Alex of, okay, it's great and all that you made the promise that you were going to get more diverse people in these positions. Is it necessarily Netflix's job to go out and look for said person, or does said person just need to come to them and they can be open about it? And I'd argue that, Netflix is a business like any other. They, like, you've done management, so at that point, do you have in your in your band of time from 9 to 5 to go out and look for the diversity hire, or does the diversity hire need to come to you?
I would definitely say it needs to come to me.
Yeah, exactly. And
I
and
don't.
that
I
was
don't like.
that was one of my arguments there, and actually got people thinking about it. So that's all I'm looking to do. I'm not necessarily looking to shape hearts and minds. I'm at least getting my hope at the end of the day is just, are you thinking about it? Like, could this be something that we have to consider? And I guess one thing that I can officially point out while I'm eating ice, because I'm thirsty, man, um, is welcome back to the podcast. So me and Brinton have hashed out a lot of that stuff. And here's the thing. As I told him, he wasn't the person solely at fault. I actually did get a little heated in that conversation too. And part of it was because I was dealing with a bunch of other people, some of which were immediately calling me out and saying that if I love this conversation that one of them pointed out, is like, because of my viewpoint on Black Lives Matter, because I don't like organizations. I like people. Like, I don't support organizations because in some cases organizations just don't support the people. And so I got a lot of comparisons of like, oh, so if your neighbor black family's house was on fire, you wouldn't go save anybody in that house. Fuck yeah, I would, because they have kids and I have kids. And I know what that would do to me if I lost my kids. So fuck yeah, I would. I would definitely go out and help them. And you know what? I'd give them a place on my couch and in my tuna can of a house. All right. I would let them live here. That's not my problem. And I had, so there was stuff on my end too, where I did approach things aggressively, and I'm probably still going to do that. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with it because I can pull that back and we can actually have that conversation. But that's what I want people to take away from this is don't let people weaponize your fandom. If you want to go enjoy it, go enjoy it. If you want to go play D&D and you want to go play an orc, does that mean you're against black people? No. It means you want to play an orc. Or you want to have your party go up against a band of orcs. Because it's fantasy, dumbass. And it doesn't exist that way. So at that point, that's really all I want to get in here. Welcome back to the podcast, Brinton. Now that we can say we have all that heavy shit out of the way, I'm sure somebody will immediately start putting the fanfic back together again. And they'll be so happy that they can put the fanfic back together again. So you're welcome, internet person. That's happening.
This is where I announce our The Last of Us Part 2 Let's Play. I'm just kidding.
I think I burned the game. No, Andrea wouldn't let me burn the game because she still liked it. I just ended up having a lot of issues with it.
No, like on it, like one, I am super joking in terms of like content between Adam and I. Solely right now, it's gonna be podcast shows, which I can promise you, like I will be on every single one. It's not gonna be a question of, oh, is Brinton gonna be here? It's no, I'm gonna be there 100%.
Well, and if
There's
he's
no question
sick,
about
then
it.
we'll obviously tell him. But no,
Well, yeah. I'm not gonna push myself that hard.
But there might be some stream content that he shows up on because I don't necessarily have a problem with that, and I think Andrea would love to have a day off every now and again. So I mean that'll happen too. But right now we are just looking forward to ushering in the podcast in this new year, and hopefully people will like the new format of it, which should be going up before this because this will be RSS exclusive. So at that point, you guys could get this, and you guys can look forward to Brinton Valli joining the panel this upcoming Friday as we discuss the best of 2022, or the best of 2021, what little there was. And then on top of that, January, holy shit, Romney's Principle is in total effect. And by the way, I'm still keeping Romney's War, Romney's Principle. That's still the thing. And Romney's Principle is whenever we take an absence from the podcast, shit goes down, and therefore we have tons of stories to talk about. Or as my inner dad wants to say shit gets real, yo. I don't mind looking like a dad.
So get ready, you sassy senoritas, because Brinton's back.
Indeed. Wow.
I've waited I've been waiting a month to say that because I haven't said it in like 2 years.
I was actually gonna say this is not a good sign because there's a Batman movie coming out this year. Does that mean we get to see the return of the Bat Boner?
The Bat Boner. Oh my gosh! Okay.
I don't know.
In some capacity, I've matured quite a bit.
Yes.
In the last 2 years. So
we don't allow maturity on the podcast. You're immediately out.
Okay. Well, I guess this was all for naught.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we will.
You're probably
go ahead.
In some capacity. In some capacity, I do have that silliness to my personality, and if you're to ask my boyfriend, because I am dating somebody exclusively again. I mean, he would probably say, "Oh yeah, like he can get pretty dirty when he wants to." So,
We have evidence of
So it's
it.
not completely gone. It's just a little bit more controlled.
I was gonna say, like, how dirty did we get in Devil May Cry 5?
Oh my gosh.
Actually, no, you know what? Onimusha was dirtier, I think, because then you had Alex there.
What? Oh my gosh. I need to like sit down and listen to those again. I can't even remember half the things I said. Um, but like you said, I am in management. I actually just for fun facts for people to know, I work for a social services agency, and I'm a regional director
Yep.
over all of Salt Lake and Tooele County for the department that I manage. So I have to be a little bit more contained and watch a little bit better what I say because it does go on the internet, and I don't
Yes.
want to say anything that's going to unintentionally make me lose my job because I
Yes.
do love what I do, and I super don't want to lose it. So
Exactly. I mean, I technically should do that for Amazon, but well, fuck Amazon. I'll say whatever I want. Because the way I see it is like, if they actually start censoring me, then I'm gonna pull a Trey Parker and Matt Stone and just because I've already probably ruined my way of getting into any kind of social circles. But I'm the Trey Parker and Matt Stone of Utah. That's the way it is. But yeah, so we are rambling at this point, and we are coming up on an hour. So once again, welcome back to the podcast, Brinton. I know that we had this
thank you.
crap happen, but you and I kind of worked that out, and it's going to be great to be able to welcome you back. We're not just bringing you back for the dirty jokes. We're bringing you back because maybe you have like a legit opinion that needs to be heard on some of these things, and that's
I do know
okay.
that quite a bit of you did genuinely enjoy my opinions and just like the things that I've said in shows from years ago. So I'm super happy to come back and provide more of that content for you guys.
I just look forward to the comment that I will eventually get because I used to get this with Romney, and now because the only reason I had Romney on was to fulfill my brown people check mark on my dedicated woke checklist that I don't have. And so now
Oh my
everybody's going to be
gosh.
like, "Oh, well, you're obviously subbing it in so you can have some LGBTQ props on there." Yeah, that's totally what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, because I am the representative of the LGBT community in all of Utah.
Yeah,
Oh my lord.
let me tell you.
I'm
He is
not even like I'm not even an active participant. I just watch silently from the background as all the gays and lesbians tear each other down in the community. So
which is it's kind of true. It really is. Like
no, it's so completely true.
it
Like
it's
like
ridiculous.
friend I mean like friends, if we can really drive home everything that we've talked about in this particular episode, like it's not just the geek fandom, all of its like many appendages of where people are tearing each other down. It's all communities. So if we can start setting an example for the rest of the world, like let's do it.
Mhm.
Everybody already thinks that video games cause violence, so let's not perpetuate that terrible, terrible, terrible fault
Exactly.
like statement.
Exactly. But I have to say, well, there goes that good report card I thought I was going to get with the gay community. I was officially going to say, man, I have something that John Cena doesn't. But I guess that's not going to happen. Nah, that's all right. So, once again, we will be back on Friday to be able to discuss the month's events in Geek. And until then, take care, my friends. We will see you then.